Hello students, welcome back to another online lecture of the online lecture series initiated by Shet Vidya Mandir, English High School and Junior College of Science and Commerce, Vasai. I am Mrs. Nehal Falkau. Students, today we are going to study a chapter from section 1 of your English course book. The name of the chapter is Into the Wild. The excerpts, that is, the pieces of writing of this chapter, are taken from Sakha Nagzira, written by Kiran Purandare. Let us learn more about the writer Kiran Purandare. Kiran Purandare is a wildlife expert, a bird watcher, a writer, and an honorary wildlife warden in Maharashtra. After completing his BCom, he studied environmental studies at Jordan Hill College of Education in Scotland. He is a recipient of the Sahitya Puraskar, Pune's Bhai Madhav Bagal Award, and Best Literature Award given by Cultural Department of Maharashtra State for his book named Sakha Nagzira. Kiran Purandare spent 400 days inside the forest of Nagzira and nearby forest areas and wrote this award-winning book. This excerpt, that is, piece of writing, has been taken from the same book. He is also the founder of Nisarga Ved organization, which works for nature conservation and community work around Nagzira, Navegaon, a tiger reserve in Bhandara and Gondia districts. He also founded Kika's Bird Club in order to spread bird farming, which is very popular among school-going children of Maharashtra. Today, we are going to study part 1 of the chapter Into the Wild. The name of part 1 is Lost in the Jungle. As the name suggests, the excerpt is an amazing experience of the writer where Kiran Purandare, the solitary traveller, that is, a traveller travelling alone, is completely lost in the jungles of Umbarzara. He narrates how he lost his way at the fall of the dusk, and the terrifying turmoil means disturbance he underwent thereafter. Shouting for help would literally mean crying in the wilderness. Wilderness means a wild and inhabited area left in its natural condition. In this excerpt, he also gives a detailed description of how he found his way towards the village of Pitezari. Let us study part 1, Lost in the Jungle, of the chapter Into the Wild. The 8.5-hour long day inside the hide was as fruitful as the jamba tree standing tall on the edge of Umbarzara. Before wrapping up my day at this natural waterhole, I took entries of the avifauna in my field notes. Since I was alone, I rushed to the Pitesari village where I was stationed. I camouflaged the hide, took my essentials, came out of the hide and stretched out to my heart's content. I lifted my camera bag and took the familiar trail to Pitesari. Negotiating the webbed leaves of teakwood and moha trees, trying to make minimal sound, I was treading cautiously among the woods. Walking alone in a jungle needs more alertness than walking with a companion. I was alone here like a fox. In this paragraph, the writer, Kiran Purandare, tells us that he was hiding inside the hide for 8.5 hours in the jungle of Umbarzara. The hide means a camouflaged shelter or a place built to look like its surrounding, which is used to observe the wildlife at close quarters. The writer's day had been very fruitful, that is, productive, and he was probably successful in doing what he had planned for that particular day. He had spent his day at the natural waterhole. Waterhole means a small pool of water in a dry area where animals go to drink water. Before the writer decided to bring his day to an end, he took notes of the avifauna birds in his field notes. Field notes are qualitative notes usually recorded by researchers. Avifauna are birds of a particular region, habitat, or geological period. The writer tells us that he was alone in this jungle, so he rushed, that is, hurried to the Pitesari village where he was stationed, means assigned a specific place for a particular purpose. He camouflaged means he hid or disguised the place where he was hiding. Then he took all his essentials he had been carrying around with him. He came out of his hiding place and stretched to his heart's content. That is, he stretched his body to the full extent of his heart's desire. He then lifted his camera bag and took the trail, means a path or track that was quite familiar to him. This trail or path led to the village of Pitesari. He negotiated, means succeeded in passing through the webbed leaves of teakwood and moha trees. He tried not to make any sound at all, as he was walking very cautiously, that is, carefully through the jungle. He tells us that one needs to be very alert when walking alone in the jungle than walking with a companion or a fellow traveler. At this point, the writer felt like he was a lonely fox in the jungle. Following the trail silently, watching with wide open eyes, my ears were grasping a variety of sounds just when a familiar sound stunned me. It was a langur alarm call. The leader of the gang of the langurs was sitting on the tall tree making alarm calls out of fear for life. Rest of the Langur brigade continued raising alarm calls. The network of alarm calls was expanding its range as the petrified Langurs speeded to the trees near and far and secured their places on treetops. In this particular paragraph, the writer tells us how he walked along the trail silently with his eyes wide open. His ears were trying to grasp the different sounds when a familiar sound shocked him. It was the sound of the langur. This is the picture you can see of the langurs. The leader of the gang of the langur was sitting on the treetop and was making the alarm call out of fear for life. And the rest of the Langur brigade also started giving out alarm calls. This network of alarm calls was increasing as all the Langurs were petrified, means very scared, and they hurried to the nearby trees and took their places on the tree tops. All this upheaval was created by only one animal's presence, a leopard. Many animals make alarm calls when they see a predator, a tiger or a leopard nearby. The langur is most reliable when it comes to finding clues about the presence of the apex predators in the jungle. The mighty elusive leopard of Umbarzara was out of its lair. He was on the prowl. The stealthily moving figure in spotted gold-black cloak was spied by these langurs. Even the small ones from the legion of langurs were giving alarm calls. In this paragraph, the writer tells us that all this upheaval, that is, disturbance, was created by the presence of only one animal, which was the leopard. Most animals are able to make alarm calls when they see their predator close by. Predator means an animal who lives by killing and eating other animals. Example, a tiger or a leopard. The alarm calls made by langur is most reliable, means trustworthy when it comes to finding clues about the presence of the apex, means the topmost predators in the jungle. The leopard of Umbarzara is mighty and elusive, means difficult to find or catch. This leopard was now out of its lair, means he was out of his den. He was on the prowl, means he was out there to catch his prey. These langurs had probably seen this stealthily, means secretly moving leopard who looked like he was dressed in a spotted gold black cloak. Cloak means an outer garment. Even the small ones from the legion, means the group of langurs, were now giving out alarm calls. I stayed put, gauged the leader langur's target site and scanned the area visually. Took some steps, stopped again. A fresh scat was lying before me on the trail. The bluish-purple flies were hovering over it. I was sure that the leopard was somewhere near. The distant alarm call of four-horned antelope was adding to the chaos. I barely walked around 15 meters and stopped. I had apparently entered in the sanctum sanctorum of a miracle called leopard. But the big cat was not visible. It is an elusive animal. The surroundings were reminding me that I was all alone time and again. As I moved forward on the trail to Pitezeri, the fading alarm calls were still heard in the background. I could instinctively tell that the leopard had moved away. The writer stayed put means he remained silent without moving. He gauged, that is, he determined where the langur was looking, and thus he tried to estimate around where they had spotted the leopard. He took a few steps and stopped again. He spotted some fresh scat means animal droppings or animal poop lying on the trail before him. The bluish purple flies were hovering over the poop. The writer was sure that the leopard was somewhere near him. He could hear the distant alarm call of the four-horned antelope. He walked around only 15 meters and stopped. It appeared that he had probably entered in the sanctum sanctorum of a miracle called leopard. Sanctum sanctorum means the Holy of Holies, a place, region where few are allowed as the secret or important work is being done. But the big cat, that is, the leopard, was not to be seen anywhere. It is an elusive animal, means an animal which is not easy to spot or catch. Time and again, the surroundings reminded the writer that he wasn't all alone. As he moved forward on his path to Pitezeri, he could still hear the alarm calls that were fading away. He had an instinct that the leopard had probably moved away. Meanwhile, I saw a man standing at a distance with a stick in his hand. As I approached, he appeared spooked due to alarm calls of the leopard. We greeted each other. He was Raju Iskape from Pitezeri. He had come to collect logs but retreated due to the leopard's movement. Raju was amazed at my regular solitary visits to Umbarzara, the haven for tigers, leopards and sloth bears. We stopped under a kusum tree to take a break. We both felt a bit relaxed. Now we were four eyes, four hands with a stick. Then we both resumed our walking tour. Here the writer tells us that finally he saw a man with a stick in his hand standing at a distance. As he approached, he appeared spooked, means frightened. He was frightened due to the alarm calls he heard, which indicated that a leopard was around. The writer and the man greeted each other. The writer recognized the man to be Raju Iskape from the Pitezari village. He had come there to the jungle to collect logs, that is, blocks of wood. But he retreated, that is, he turned back due to the presence of the leopard. Raju was surprised how the writer visits the jungle of Umbarzara all alone. The jungle of Umbarzara was the haven, that is, home for tigers, leopards, and sloth bears. They both stopped under a kusum tree to take a break. They both felt a bit relaxed in each other's company. They realized that now they were more safe because they had 4 eyes, 4 hands, and also a stick with them. Then they both resumed their walking tour. There was one tiny track that broke out of the main trail. "I will take this route, you go straight," said Raju and turned right. I kept walking straight until I climbed a familiar hillock. I crossed the cement pillar and stones stacked by the Forest Development Corporation to mark the boundary of the forest compartment. Took another trail after climbing down. Walked across a beautiful mahua tree loaded with reddish brown leaves. The ground under the tree was cleaned very well. The thought instantly flashed in my mind. I'd lost my way. Here the writer tells us that he found a tiny track or path that broke out of the main trail or road. Raju said to the writer that he would take that particular route, and he instructed the writer to go straight. And Raju himself turned right. The writer kept walking straight until he found a familiar hillock. Hillock means a small hill or mound. Once he found this familiar hillock, he climbed it. He crossed the cement pillar and stones stacked by Forest Development Corporation. This cement pillar was constructed and the stones were stacked by the Forest Development Corporation in order to mark the boundary of the forest compartment. The writer climbed down the hillock and took another trail, that is, path. He walked across a beautiful mahua tree which was laden, that is, which was full of reddish brown leaves. The ground under that tree was very clean. The writer instantly was flashed with a thought, the thought that he had lost his way. Next moment, I found another dusky trail. Hastily, I took that trail, which took me from a narrow gorge to an open field. The area was surrounded by hillocks of dry deciduous tropical forest. I turned back to spot the sun. Now the geographical west was set. The dusky trail had vanished. Good heavens, I was lost, completely lost in this jungle. That too at a very dreadful time. The sun was melting down like a fleeting runner. Next moment, the writer found another dusky trail. In a haste or hurry, he took to that trail. This trail took him from a narrow gorge to an open field. Gorge means a narrow valley between hills. He came upon an area that was surrounded by hillocks of dry deciduous tropical forest. Deciduous forests are those having trees that shed leaves in the dry season. He turned back to spot the sun. Now he could locate where was the west direction geographically. The dusky trail had vanished, that is, disappeared. The writer now realized that he was completely lost in that jungle, and that too at a very dreadful, that is, a scary time. The sun was setting down like a fleeting runner, means a runner who runs very fast. It means that it was getting darker very soon. Soaked in my own sweat, I felt like shouting to my heart's content. But there was no other soul to listen to my sound in this wilderness. I had two bags with me, the Shabnam bag having the camera, and the other was a small colorful handmade bag used in villages to carry tiffin. The tiffin still had some stuff, but I didn't feel like having it. The blossoming boxwood trees, the boop boop sound of cockle bird, the sound of robin bird all appeared alien to me. In this paragraph, the writer tells us that he started sweating. He felt like shouting as loud as he could. But then he realized that there was not even a single soul to listen to his sound in this wilderness. Wilderness means a wild and inhabited area left in its natural condition. He had two bags with him. One was the Shabnam bag which carried the camera, and the other was a small, colorful, handmade bag used in villages to carry tiffin boxes. His tiffin box still contained some food, but he did not feel like eating anything. The blossoming boxwood trees, the boop boop sound of the cockle bird, the song of the robin bird all appeared alien to me. That is, all these appeared to be from another world, as he could not hear any of these sounds now. The first picture here is the picture of the cockle bird, and the second picture is the picture of the robin bird. It was more than an hour, and I was still there searching for a suitable tree to climb and get secured. Turn back to the trail you left, my mind was telling me. But there were no signs of the trail. I had no other way to climb the hillock before me. There were more hillocks and some more around the one I was standing. Near my feet were the dried up droppings of sloth bear. The sloth bear of Umbarzara must be out in the open, sniffing for food. I cautioned myself. Thinking of averting all sorts of eventuality, I made a move. I ran down the hillock that I had climbed up at a frantic speed. The west was to my right hand side now. The evening breeze flew through my wet curled hair. My stomach was aching. I kept walking in hope. Here, the writer tells us that it was now more than an hour and he was still searching for a suitable tree that he could climb up and thus get himself secured from any kind of danger. His mind kept telling him to turn back to the trail he had left behind. But sadly, there were no signs of the trail that he had left behind. He had no other way to climb the hillock that was before him. There were more hillocks and some more hillocks around the one that he was standing. Near his feet he could see the dried up droppings, that is poop, of the sloth bear. He warned himself that the dangerous sloth bear of Umbarzara must be out there in the jungle sniffing for food. Thinking that he should avoid all such happenings, he decided to move on. He ran down the hillock that he had climbed up at a frantic means and uncontrolled speed. The west direction was to his right hand side now. The evening breeze flew through his curled hair that was wet due to his own sweat. His stomach started aching, means paining. He kept on walking with a hope in his heart to get back to the village. After around 50 steps, I found a bright red soil trail. I found my silver lining on this trail. There were marks of bicycle wheel on this trail. That was a big consolation for me. There must be a village nearby, I reassured myself. More questions resurfaced. How far is the village and where, in which direction? I climbed one more hillock and tried to locate signs of human civilization. My legs were trembling. Here, the writer tells us that after taking around 50 steps or so, he found a trail made up of bright red soil. Here, he found his silver lining, means a ray of hope in darkness on that trail. There were a few marks of bicycle wheel on this trail, which showed that someone had passed through that trail. That was a big relief for the writer. He reassured and comforted himself by telling himself that there must be a village nearby. Soon, more questions started resurfacing in his mind. Questions like, how far is the village and where is it and in which direction? He climbed one more hillock and tried to find if he could see any signs of human civilization around. His legs were trembling, that is, shivering. This must be either due to fear or maybe because he was tired or maybe both. As I reached the top of the hill, I jumped with joy. I heard the sounds of people talking in the loudspeaker. In a jiffy, I ran down the hill towards the sound with full vigor. I stumbled and fell down, saw droppings of blue bulls nearby, struggled, stood up, and decided which direction to move on. The signs of civilization were visible. The tiny sleepy village of Pitezari was visible through the green woods. The lantern of Rajiram Balavi's farm, the loudspeaker installed for Keshav Balavi's marriage, all were in clear sight. Turned left to spot the village lake and familiar hillock Suihudaki. The dog barked to welcome me to the village. The writer here tells us that as soon as he reached the top of the hill, he started jumping with joy. This was because he could hear the sounds of people talking over the loudspeaker. In a jiffy, that is, in a hurry, he ran down the hill with full vigor towards the direction from where the sound was coming. Due to this, he stumbled and fell down. He saw droppings of blue bulls nearby. This is the picture of the blue bull. He struggled to get up, but he finally stood up and decided which direction to move on. The signs of human civilization were now visible to him. He could see the tiny sleepy village of Pitezari through the green woods. He could see the lantern of Rajiram Balavi's farm. He could also clearly see the loudspeaker that was installed in the village for Keshav Balavi's marriage. He turned left and he spotted the village lake and the familiar hillock named Suihudaki. As he entered the village, the dog started barking as if he was welcoming the writer. The first thing I did was to take a bath. The shaking of limbs had lessened a bit. The stomachache started again. Ate to the full and then slumped onto the cot. Lying awake, looking at the star-studded sky, I spoke to myself. There still exists a jungle where we can get lost. Isn't this a good luck? The writer here tells us that the first thing he did as soon as he entered his residence in the village was to go and get himself cleaned by taking a bath. The shaking of his limbs had now reduced a bit, but his stomach ache started again. He ate to the full and then slumped, that is, fell heavily onto the cot. Lying awake on the cot, he looked at the sky that was filled with stars, and he spoke to himself. there still exists a jungle where we can get lost. Isn't this our good luck? Means he tells us that we are really lucky to still have jungles and trees and nature around us, so that we can roam around there and sometimes get lost. This was all from part 1 of the chapter Into the Wild. In my next video, we shall study part 2 of the same chapter. Thank you.